I still remember those mysterious whispers, those covert smiles he thought I was oblivious to. His sudden and secret so-called cabin trips with the boys were more frequent and enigmatic. For a long time, trust was a bridge we both built, and I never thought he would be the one to burn it. The day I decided to surprise him, the shock was mine to embrace, and the scene before me was anything but anticipated. In this narration, I share a transformative journey from being a deceived spouse to discovering strength and resilience I never knew resided within me. This story is not just a tale of betrayal and revenge, but it's about metamorphosis, redemption, learning to love oneself, and finding strength in the darkest of times. But remember, it's not just a tale of revenge, it's a story that transcends beyond the usual norms, breaking the stereotypes of vengeance and reaching a state of liberation, acceptance, and empowerment. My name is Camilla, and this is my story. So there I was, casually sipping my morning coffee, browsing through old photos of us, hubby and me, laughing, kissing, being the embodiment of a picture-perfect marriage. It had been 5 blissful years, but something was off lately. Every few weekends, my husband would gather his bags and vanish into the wilderness with his gang of friends, or the boys, as he affectionately called them, leaving me to wonder what mysterious adventures they were off to. His tales of these secretive escapades were riddled with inconsistencies. He'd say they were fishing, but there would be no pictures of fish. He'd say they were camping, but there'd be no photos of tents. Must be a guy thing, I would say to myself, pushing aside the nagging doubt and the nagging feeling that something was amiss. Curiosity is a potent brew, and eventually I caved. I decided to surprise him on one of his secret cabin trips. My heart raced with anticipation as I drove through winding roads surrounded by dense whispering trees to the secluded cabin where they supposedly hung out. I hope he's happy to see me, I muttered to myself, my hands clammy on the wheel. As I reached the sight before me made my heart sink into my stomach. There was my husband, but there were no boys. Instead, there she was, a woman, her laughter harmonizing with his in a symphony of betrayal. Rage bubbled inside me as I watched them, unseen. But rather than confront them, an idea hatched inside my head, a spectacular, dramatic, grandiose display of revenge seasoned with a sprinkling of public humiliation. I started my meticulous plan by gathering evidence. I clicked photographs, collected voice recordings, snippets of their stolen moments together. Each piece of evidence was a sharp sting, a reminder of the facade of my marriage. I kept telling myself, focus, this is for the grand revelation. This will be worth it. With all the evidence I needed, it was time to set the stage. I decided to throw a grand party, a soiree to celebrate love and commitment. My invitations were extended to all our friends, family, and acquaintances, and there was a peculiar emphasis on the boys to make sure they attend. My heart pounded as I prepared, knowing that the mask of perfection would soon be shattered. To my delight, the party was buzzing. The air was saturated with laughter and chatter, everyone blissfully ignorant of the drama that was about to unfold. My husband, basking in the love and attention showered upon him, was completely oblivious to the storm brewing around him. With every passing second, my heart raced, but I kept my composure. I smiled, I laughed, I played the gracious host, waiting for the perfect moment to drop my bombshell. And then it arrived, the moment when everyone was gathered, their attention fixated on us as we were about to make a toast. I raised my glass high, my voice steady, to love and to the beautiful secrets it holds. With a smirk, I started the projection. The room fell into stunned silence as images flashed across the screen, the laughter and whispers of stolen moments echoing around the room. The air was charged with shock, betrayal, and whispered accusations. I watched as the color drained from my husband's face, his eyes darting around, looking for an escape from the web of his own making. The room was a battlefield, and I was the lone warrior standing tall amidst the ruins of my marriage. Victorious yet broken, I had pulled off my grand revenge. The public humiliation etched on his face was the trophy I hadn't known I wanted. But there was no joy in this victory, only the cold, empty realization that the man I had loved was never truly mine. And while the whispers and the stares surrounded me, the only sound that echoed in my mind was the shattering of my own heart. Fallout from my dramatic revelation was like a slow burning fire consuming everything in its path. My husband, or should I say soon-to-be ex-husband, was now the subject of hushed whispers and furtive glances, his reputation in tatters. The next day, he tried to approach me, his eyes swollen, probably from remorse or perhaps just from being caught. "Please, can we talk about this?" he pleaded, his voice a fragile whisper. "I have nothing to say to you," I replied coldly, my heart stone against his pleas, but my mind was a whirlwind of emotions, torn between the remnants of love and the fresh wounds of betrayal. Every fiber of my being screamed to run away, to escape the ruins of my once happy life. But no, I wasn't done. The dramatic revelation was just the appetizer. The main course of revenge was still being served. In my pursuit of revenge, I found unlikely allies. Boys feeling betrayed themselves were more than willing to assist me in my mission. We colluded, planned, and executed meticulous schemes to expose his lies further, to tarnish his image and isolate him from everyone who once admired him. We worked in shadows, our moves calculated, our intentions clear. Our little revenge squad was a ticking time bomb, and it exploded, revealing more secrets, more betrayals. It seemed my husband had created a labyrinth of lies, a maze so complex that even he was lost in it. The more I discovered, the more my heart hardened. The slivers of love that remained were now turning into shards of hate. And then there was her, the other woman, the partner in his deceit. My anger towards her was a raging inferno, but I also saw her as a pawn in his twisted game, another victim of his lies. I approached her, my intentions unclear even to myself. Was it to confront her, to understand her, or to simply see the face of the woman who had stolen my husband's heart? Her eyes met mine, a flicker of guilt passing through them before being replaced by defiance. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice laced with a mixture of fear and defiance. "I want to know why," was all I could muster, my voice a mere whisper, the pain and anger battling within me. She too had been a puppet in his game, unaware of his marital status, fed lies coated in sweet words. It became clear that in his quest for thrill and adventure, he had played us both, leaving a trail of broken hearts in his wake. The revelation sparked a strange camaraderie between us, two broken souls united by betrayal. We exchanged stories, tears, and mutual regrets, the pain forging an unspoken bond between us. It was a connection neither of us had sought, but there we were, confiding, understanding, healing. As I listened to her, my rage simmered into a cold, calculated resolve. This was not just my battle anymore. It was our battle, a war against deceit and betrayal. We became partners in revenge, planning the final act of this drama, the grand finale where he would be stripped of his masks, his true face revealed to the world. As the day of reckoning approached, my newfound ally and I met in secret, refining our plan and sharing our vulnerabilities. Our bond was strange, but it was real, forged in the fires of betrayal. We were two wounded warriors fighting a common enemy, our pain our strongest weapon. Finally, the day arrived. The stage was set, and all the actors were in their places. The air was thick with tension, charged with anticipation. I felt a kaleidoscope of emotions as I prepared to face him, my stomach in knots, my heart racing. This is it, the moment of truth. I said to myself, steadying my breath, preparing for the storm ahead. We had planned a public confrontation, a spectacular showdown where all his lies would be laid bare, his charade exposed. We had invited friends, family, colleagues, anyone who had known him, respected him. It was to be a court of public opinion, a platform where his true self would be revealed. He walked in unsuspecting, his usual charm in place, his smile radiating confidence. He had no idea that his fortress of lies was about to crumble, his empire of deceit about to fall. My heart hammered in my chest as he approached, his eyes searching mine, a flicker of curiosity in them. "What is all this?" he asked, the innocence in his voice almost convincing. And then the storm broke, a torrent of accusations, revelations, and confessions pouring down on him. His face changed, the mask slipping, revealing the man behind it, the real him. The room was a battlefield, his defenders fighting a losing battle, the truth slicing through their defenses, exposing the rot within. His eyes darted around, looking for an escape, a way out of this nightmare, but there was none. The walls were closing in, his past catching up to him. The air was electric, the tension palpable, the silence broken only by the whispers of shock and disbelief. It was a spectacle, a display of his true self, each layer peeled back, revealing the man he really was, his charm, his charisma, all stripped away, leaving behind a broken, defeated man. The room was a sea of faces, each one a mirror reflecting his betrayal, his deceit. I watched him, my heart a mix of satisfaction and sorrow, the final act playing out before my eyes. I had dreamed of this moment, longed for it, the sweet taste of revenge on my lips. But as I saw him there, broken, lost, a part of me mourned the man I had loved, the man I had thought he was. He tried to speak, to defend himself, to explain, but his words were empty, his voice a hollow echo. The truth was out, the mask shattered, and all that remained was the man, the real man, exposed and vulnerable. His eyes met mine, a plea in them, a silent request for forgiveness, understanding, but it was too late. The damage was done, and all that remained was the ruins of a life, a love destroyed by his own hands. The confrontation was a catharsis, a release of all the pain, the anger, the betrayal. It was a cleansing, a purification, the truth washing away the stains of his lies. And as the dust settled, as the echoes of the confrontation faded, I felt a sense of peace, a calmness I hadn't felt in a long time. As I walked away from the ruins of my past, a sense of freedom enveloped me, a lightness in my step. I had fought the battle, won the war, and now the future was mine to shape, to mold. The pain was still there, the scars still fresh, but I was healing, growing, evolving. I looked back one last time at the man I had loved, the man I had lost. He was a shadow, a ghost of his former self. His world crumbled, his life in shambles. It was a painful sight, a reminder of what could have been, what should have been, but it was also a symbol of my strength, my resilience, my ability to rise from the ashes, to rebuild, to renew. And with a final glance, a final goodbye, I turned away, leaving the past behind, stepping into the future, a future of possibilities, of hope, of new beginnings. The aftermath of the confrontation was a maelstrom of emotions, a tempest of pain and relief, regret and vindication. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, but the echo of betrayal still reverberated in the back of my mind. "You've done it. You've exposed him," I said to myself, trying to grasp the enormity of what had just transpired. He was now the talk of the town, whispers of his deceitful exploits permeating through every social circle. His name was synonymous with betrayal, his image tarnished beyond repair. It was the bitter fruit of his deception, a consequence of his actions, and it tasted oh so sweet to my revenge-fueled heart. Our shared acquaintances were divided, some siding with him, ensnared in his web of charming lies, while others extended their sympathy to me, their eyes newly opened to his true colors. He was a war of opinions, a battlefield of conflicting loyalties, and I was at its center, a symbol of his deceit and downfall. The other woman, once my opponent, now my ally, also began her journey of healing. Our bond, though born of pain and betrayal, had become a beacon of support and understanding, a shared experience that only we could truly comprehend. We were the wounded survivors of his emotional onslaught, and together we started to rebuild our broken selves. During this turbulent time, my newfound strength became my guiding light, my compass through the storm. I immersed myself in activities that brought me joy, surrounded myself with people who loved and supported me. This is your time, your moment to rediscover yourself. I constantly reminded myself. Every day was a battle, a struggle to move past the pain, to let go of the bitterness. There were moments of weakness, moments where the shadows of the past threatened to engulf me, but I fought back, clung to the light, to the hope of a better tomorrow. The path was rocky, the journey long, but I persevered, my resolve unbroken. I indulged in self-care, explored new hobbies, met new people, opened my heart to new experiences. I learned to love myself, to value my worth, to see beyond the scars, beyond the pain. It was a journey of self-discovery, of growth, of transformation. I was a phoenix rising from the ashes, reborn in the fire of my trials. However, the shadow of him lingered, a ghost haunting my steps, his memory a constant reminder of the pain, the betrayal. But with each passing day, the shadow grew fainter, the pain less sharp, the memories less vivid. I was healing, slowly, gradually, the wounds closing, the scars fading. In my journey of rebirth, I also learned the power of forgiveness, the strength in letting go. I realized that harboring the bitterness, the anger, was only poisoning my soul, chaining me to the past, to him. To truly be free, to truly move on, you must forgive, a wise friend advised me. It was not easy to release the anger, to let go of the resentment. It was a battle, a struggle within myself, but I fought it. I conquered it. I learned to forgive, not for him, but for me, to free myself from the chains of the past, to cleanse my soul from the toxins of bitterness. It was a release, a liberation, a breath of fresh air. Forgiving him was my final act of revenge, my ultimate victory. It was my way of taking back my power, my control, my life. It was my declaration of independence, my proclamation of freedom. I was no longer his victim, no longer his prisoner. I was free, free to live, to love, to be me. In this newfound freedom, in this rebirth, I found my true self, my authentic self. I learned to embrace my flaws, to celebrate my uniqueness, to love myself unconditionally. I discovered my worth, my value, my essence. I was me, unapologetically, proudly, freely. And as I walked this path of self-discovery, of healing, of growth, I realized that this journey, this experience had shaped me, molded me into the person I was meant to be. It was a painful lesson, a harsh reality. It was my truth, my story, and I owned it, embraced it, learned from it. In this climactic juncture of my life, where forgiveness had paved the road to my emancipation from pain and I was evolving every day, I also had a revelation. What if my true revenge is not just unearthing his deceitful endeavors, but also blooming in the ruins he left me in? I thought, a newfound purpose illuminating my path. I decided to convert my sufferings, my experiences, into stepping stones to help others going through the same agony. It was time to turn the tables, time to metamorphose my pain into power, my sufferings into solace for others. My journey found a voice in the form of a support group where broken hearts met to share, to heal, and to find strength and unity. It was a sanctuary of broken souls, a haven where wounded hearts found solace, understanding, and hope. Every story shared was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that we were not alone in our pain. Here, amidst tears and laughter, pain and hope, I saw the transformative power of shared experiences, of mutual support, of unconditional love. It was a magical experience, a healing journey, a rediscovery of self-worth, and I was humbled to be a part of it. Every session was a step closer to healing, a move towards self-discovery, a journey towards self-love. It was an emotional roller coaster, a symphony of pain and hope, sorrow and joy, and it was beautiful. I was witnessing the metamorphosis of broken spirits, the rebirth of lost souls, the rediscovery of buried self-love. However, my journey was not without its challenges, its setbacks. There were moments of weakness, of doubt, of despair. There were times when the shadows of the past threatened to engulf me, to pull me back into the abyss of pain. But I fought, I persevered, I overcame. Every challenge faced was a victory won, every setback overcome was a step forward. I am not defined by my past, by his betrayal. I am defined by my strength, by my resilience, by my ability to rise above the pain. I reminded myself during those trying times, it was my mantra, my shield against the shadows, my beacon in the darkness. In this journey of self-discovery, of healing, of transformation, I also found love not in another, but in myself. I learned to appreciate my worth, to celebrate my uniqueness, to embrace my flaws. I discovered the beauty in self-love, the power in self-acceptance, the freedom in self-expression. I was not searching for someone to complete me, to fix me, to save me. I was complete, whole, beautiful in my imperfection. I was my savior, my hero, my love. I was enough. In the end, my revenge was not just exposing his deceit, not just surviving his betrayal, but thriving despite it. It was about transforming my pain into power, my suffering into strength, my tears into pearls of wisdom. It was about rising from the ashes, soaring above the pain, embracing my true self. And there he was, shackled by the chains of his deceit, imprisoned in the web of his lies, a prisoner of his own making. He had lost everything, his reputation, his friends, his love, while I had gained everything, my self-worth, my strength, my freedom. My true revenge was my transformation, my evolution, my liberation. It was the realization of my worth, the acceptance of my flaws, the celebration of my uniqueness. It was my journey from victim to survivor, from survivor to warrior, from warrior to victor. In conclusion, revenge is not about causing pain. It's about reclaiming your power. It's not about dwelling in the past. It's about building your future. It's not about him. It's about you.
The sound of packing tape ripping through silence feels like someone tearing apart my life, strip by methodical strip. I stand frozen in our bedroom doorway, watching Mark seal another cardboard box. He hasn't noticed me yet, too focused on his careful labeling system, the same attention to detail that once made me fall in love with him. I'm Clara, and this is the moment my marriage ends. Not with the dramatic flair of a soap opera, but with the mundane sound of packing tape and marker squeaks. Were you planning to tell me, or just disappear while I was at work? My voice comes out steadier than I feel. Mark startles, dropping the marker. It rolls under our bed, the bed we picked out together at that overpriced furniture store his mother hated. You're home early. Clearly not early enough. I step into the room, my heels clicking against hardwood. Each step feels like I'm walking through molasses. How long have you been planning this? He doesn't answer immediately, just runs his hands through his hair. A nervous tick I used to find endearing. Clara, we both know this isn't working. Do we? Because I must have missed that conversation. I pick up one of his precisely labeled boxes. Winter clothes. It reads in his perfect architect's handwriting. When exactly did we decide this? Mother thinks, of course. I laugh, but it sounds more like breaking glass. Vivian thinks, Vivian says, Vivian knows best. Tell me, Mark, do you even breathe without checking with her first? His face hardens. That's not fair. Fair? I set the box down hard enough to make him wince. Fair would be having an actual conversation about our marriage before you started packing it away in neat little boxes. Fair would be acknowledging that I'm your wife, not some temporary inconvenience standing between you and your mother's approval. You're being dramatic. He turns back to his packing, a dismissive gesture that ignites something fierce in my chest. Mother simply pointed out that our financial situations are fine. My business is growing. We're not struggling. Your little design projects aren't exactly reliable income. My little projects paid for half this house. I grab the box he's working on, dumping his carefully folded shirts onto the floor. And they'd be doing even better if your mother hadn't scared away 3 of my biggest clients last month. He freezes. What are you talking about? Oh, you didn't know. Funny how the Hendersons, the Patels, and Brighton Corp all suddenly pulled their contracts after meeting with your mother about property investments. I start counting on my fingers. The same mother who just happens to be pushing you to leave because I'm financially unstable. Mark's face pales slightly, but he recovers quickly. You're paranoid. Mother would never... Stop saying mother like she's some kind of saint. I grab another box, this one labeled important documents. Let's see what else she's been orchestrating, shall we? He lunges for the box, but I'm faster. Inside, beneath bank statements and insurance papers, I find a folder I've never seen before. The contents make my blood run cold. Detailed reports of my business dealings, copies of emails between my clients, even photos of me meeting with competitors. She's been having me followed? My hands shake as I flip through the papers. It's not what you think. Mark reaches for the folder, but I step back. Mother was just concerned about our future. She wanted to make sure that I was properly destroyed before you left me. I clutch the folder to my chest. How long have you known about this? His silence is answer enough. Get out! My voice is ice now, all the heat of anger crystallizing into something harder. Take your boxes and get out, but these... I wave the folder. These stay with me. Clara, please. I said get out! I throw the empty box at him. It bounces harmlessly off his chest, but he flinches as if I'd struck him. Go run to Mommy. Tell her she won, but make sure you tell her something else too. I step closer, lowering my voice. Tell her she just made the biggest mistake of her life. Mark stares at me for a long moment, then silently begins gathering his boxes. As he walks past me, he pauses. I'm sorry it ended this way. No, I say, watching him leave. You're not sorry it ended this way. You're just sorry I found out this way. The front door closes with a quiet click, but in my mind, it echoes like a gunshot. I sink onto our bed, my bed now, still clutching the folder of surveillance reports. Tears burn behind my eyes, but I refuse to let them fall. Instead, I open my phone and dial. Sophie, I need your help. It's time to make Vivian regret ever hearing my name. Sophie arrives with 2 bottles of wine and a determined expression that tells me she's already formulating plans. I've spent the last hour spreading the surveillance photos across my dining room table like some twisted puzzle. This is next-level crazy, Sophie says, examining a photo of me having lunch with the Hendersons last month. Who does this? Someone who's been planning to destroy me for years. I pour us both generous glasses of red. Look at the timestamps. She's been collecting these since before Mark and I even got married. Sophie picks up another photo. Wait, isn't this from your first meeting with Brighton Corp? 3 weeks ago, right before they mysteriously backed out of our contract. The wine tastes bitter. Vivian's fingerprints are all over it, but I can't prove anything, yet. My phone buzzes. Mark's number. I silence it. He's called 4 times today. Sophie notes, watching me. Maybe you should. What? Listen to more excuses? Watch him try to justify why his mother having me stalked was somehow for my own good? I grab one of the surveillance reports. Did you know she had someone track my business expenses for the past year? Every client meeting, every supply purchase, every late-night design session, all carefully documented to paint me as financially irresponsible. The doorbell rings. Sophie and I exchange glances. If that's Mark, I swear. I start, but Sophie's already heading to the door. I hear murmured voices, then Sophie returns with an envelope. Special delivery from the Dragon Lady herself. The envelope is heavy, expensive paper, with Clara, written in Vivian's precise handwriting. Inside is an invitation to her annual charity gala next weekend, along with a handwritten note. Dear Clara, I trust you'll handle this unfortunate situation with the dignity expected of someone who was, however briefly, part of our family. The gala would be an excellent opportunity to demonstrate that maturity. Vivian. She can't be serious, Sophie says, reading over my shoulder. I start laughing, the sound sharp and hollow. Oh, she's serious. This is what she does. Turns everything into a public performance. She wants to show everyone how graciously she's handling her son's failed marriage. You're not going. Of course I'm going. I grab my laptop. In fact, I'm going to make sure it's a night Vivian never forgets. Sophie sits beside me. Clara, wait. What are you thinking? I pull up my client list. Remember Thomas Chen, the tech millionaire whose startup I did branding for last year? The one Vivian tried to poach for her new development project? Exactly. He's been looking to invest in more properties, and I happen to know exactly where Vivian's weak spots are. I start typing an email. It's time to show her what my little design projects can really do. Clara. Sophie's voice is gentle. Are you sure you want to play her game? This woman's been manipulating people for decades. I'm not playing her game. I hit send. I'm starting my own. She wants to talk about financial stability. Let's see how stable her empire is when I start picking it apart, piece by piece. My phone buzzes again. Mark. This time I answer. Clara, please, he starts. Mother says, I got the invitation. I cut him off. Tell her I'll be there. You will? He sounds surprised, then suspicious. Why? Because that's what family does, right? Shows up for important events? I keep my voice sweet, knowing Vivian's probably listening. I wouldn't want to disappoint your mother. There's a long pause. Clara, whatever you're planning. Goodbye, Mark. Give my love to your mother. I hang up and find Sophie watching me with concern. You know this could get ugly. It already is ugly. I pull up another email, this one from the Hendersons, canceling a project we'd been planning for months. Vivian just doesn't realize it yet. My phone pings with a response from Thomas Chen. He's interested in meeting. Perfect, I murmur, then look at Sophie. Want to help me pick out a dress for the gala? Something that says, loving daughter-in-law, but also, I know where the bodies are buried? Sophie sighs, but reaches for her wine. You're really going to do this? I look at the surveillance photos spread across my table, each one a reminder of Vivian's careful, calculated destruction of my life. She thought she could break me down slowly, make me look like the unstable one who couldn't handle marriage to her precious son. I smile, and it feels dangerous. Time to show her what happens when you corner someone with nothing left to lose. The meeting with Thomas Chen takes place in a sleek downtown cafe, far from Vivian's usual haunts. He's exactly as I remember, sharp-eyed and direct, with no patience for small talk. Your proposal is interesting, he says, sliding through my presentation on his tablet. But I have to ask, why come to me specifically? I take a careful sip of espresso. Because you understand the value of disruption, Mr. Chen. And because Vivian Harrison tried to manipulate you last year. His expression doesn't change, but his fingers stop moving across the screen. Go on. She attempted to use your interest in the Riverside development to pressure other investors. When that failed, she spread rumors about your company's financial stability. I pull out my phone. showing him the relevant emails from my surveillance file. She cost you that deal. And now you're suggesting we work together to cost her something in return. He studies me over his cup. This feels personal. Everything Vivian does is personal. That's her weakness. I lean forward. The Davidson project she's been bragging about? It's built on false projections. I have proof. Before he can respond, movement near the cafe's entrance catches my eye. Mark walks in with his realtor friend, James. They haven't noticed me yet. "Excuse me," I murmur to Thomas, sliding lower in my seat. But it's too late. "Clara?" Mark sounds surprised, then suspicious as he spots Thomas. "What are you doing here?" I straighten up, forcing a smile. "Business meeting. You remember Thomas Chen?" Mark's face pales slightly. "Mr. Chen, I didn't realize you and Clara were acquainted." "We go way back," Thomas says smoothly. "Your wife's talent for spotting opportunities is remarkable." "Ex-wife," Mark corrects quickly. "And speaking of opportunities, I hope she mentioned that any business ventures in this area should really go through Vivian?" I interrupt. "Like the Riverside deal did?" James tugs at Mark's sleeve. "We're going to be late for that appointment." "Actually," Thomas stands, gathering his things, "I believe we're finished here. Clara, I'll have my team draw up the contracts. Your insight into local dynamics has been invaluable." After they leave, Mark rounds on me. "What are you doing?" "Business," I repeat. "You know, those little projects your mother's so concerned about?" "Stop it!" He grabs my arm as I try to leave. "Whatever you're planning with Chen." I wrench away. "Don't touch me. You lost the right to question my business decisions when you let your mother destroy them. She was trying to protect our family's interests." "Your family's interests." My laugh draws stares from nearby tables. "Tell me, Mark, did those interests include having me followed, photographed, having my clients threatened?" He runs a hand through his hair. That familiar gesture that used to mean stress, but now just reminds me of manipulation. "It wasn't like that. Mother only wanted—" I know exactly what she wanted. I gather my things, hands shaking slightly. And now she's going to get it. Just not the way she expected. My phone buzzes. Sophie sending details about the charity gala. Another message pops up from Thomas. "Meeting set with Davidson investors. Tomorrow." "Clara?" Mark's voice has softened. "Please don't do anything rash. Mother can make things very difficult." "More difficult than destroying my marriage? My business? My reputation?" I show him the surveillance photos on my phone. "How much more difficult can it get, Mark?" He stares at the photos, recognition flickering across his face. "Where did you get these?" "From the files you left behind. The ones documenting every move I've made for the past 3 years." I lean closer, dropping my voice. "Did you enjoy reading them? Did you and Vivian sit together, planning how to break me down piece by piece?" "It wasn't. I didn't." He stops, looking lost. "I just wanted everyone to be happy." "Well, congratulations. Your mother's happy. You're free to be her perfect son again." I start walking away, then pause. "Oh, and Mark? Tell her I'm looking forward to the gala. I have so many people I want to introduce her to." Outside, I take deep breaths of cold air until my hands stop shaking. Thomas's message still glows on my screen, promising the first real crack in Vivian's carefully constructed empire. My phone buzzes again. "Sophie, how did it go?" she asks. I watch through the cafe window as Mark makes a call, his movements agitated. "Probably warning Vivian." "Better than expected," I answer. "The game's changing, Sophie, and Vivian's about to learn she's not the only one who knows how to play." The Davidson investors meeting feels like a chess match, where every piece is made of glass. I sit quietly, watching Thomas Chen methodically dissect Vivian's project projections, while her face grows increasingly rigid. "These numbers seem optimistic," Thomas says, tapping the spreadsheet, "particularly given the current market conditions." I notice Vivian's perfectly manicured nails digging into her leather portfolio. She doesn't look at me, but I feel her awareness of my presence, like static electricity. The projections are sound, she replies smoothly. I've personally overseen every aspect of this development, so including the environmental impact reports. I slide a folder across the table, because these documents tell a rather different story. The room temperature seems to drop 10 degrees. Vivian's eyes finally meet mine, and I see something I've never witnessed before: fear. Where did you get those? Her voice remains steady, but her knuckles are white. The same place you got your surveillance photos of me. I maintain eye contact. Interesting what people will share when they realize they're not the only ones you've manipulated. Thomas clears his throat. Ladies, perhaps we should focus on... This meeting is over. Vivian stands abruptly. These allegations are baseless and... Sit down, Vivian. The command comes from Robert Davidson himself, silent until now. I'd like to hear more about these discrepancies. My phone buzzes. A text from Sophie. 911. Mark at your house. Something wrong. I force myself to stay seated, even as my stomach twists. The environmental reports were altered, I continue, to hide contamination from previous industrial use. The cleanup costs alone would triple your projected expenses. That's impossible, Vivian snaps. Those reports were confidential, like the photos of me meeting clients, or the financial records you used to convince Mark I was unstable. My phone buzzes again. I ignore it. Robert Davidson leans forward. Mrs. Harrison, is there something you'd like to explain? The meeting dissolves into technical discussions and legal implications. I slip out during a heated exchange about soil samples, my phone now vibrating constantly. Mark is sitting on my porch steps, head in his hands. He looks up as I approach, and my sharp words die in my throat. His face is ashen. What happened? Mother had a heart attack. His voice is hollow. Right after some meeting, they took her to St. Mary's. The triumph I'd felt moments ago curdles in my stomach. Is she stable for now? He stands, swaying slightly. She was asking for you. I bark out a laugh. Me? Why would she? Because she knows. Mark's eyes are red-rimmed. About everything. The Davidson deal, Thomas Chen, the environmental reports. She said she underestimated you. My hands start shaking. Mark, did you know? He steps closer. About the contamination. About how exposing it wouldn't just ruin her, but everyone connected to the project? Including me? The pieces click together with sickening clarity. Of course Vivian would have ensured Mark was legally entangled in the development. Of course she'd use him as a shield. I stop, remembering all those nights I'd spent plotting, focusing only on Vivian. Had I become just like her, willing to destroy anything in my path? My phone rings. Sophie again. Clara, the Davidson story just broke online. It's bad. Really bad. I watch Mark's face as he receives a text, probably containing the same news. He looks like a man watching his world burn. I have to go, he says quietly. Mother's asking for her lawyers. He pauses at the bottom of the steps. You know what's funny? She always said you weren't strong enough for this family. Guess she was wrong about that too. After he leaves, I sit on the porch steps, staring at my phone as notifications flood in. The story is spreading fast. Vivian Harrison, prominent developer, caught in environmental scandal. Her empire beginning to crack. I should feel victorious. Instead, I remember the fear in her eyes at the meeting, so similar to what I'd felt when discovering Mark's packed boxes. The way revenge has turned me into someone who could hurt others without flinching. Sophie's car pulls up. She takes one look at my face and sits beside me. What have I done? I whisper. She takes my hand. Exactly what she taught you to do. My phone lights up with another call, this time from Thomas Chen, probably wanting to discuss damage control, next steps, the pieces of Vivian's empire now up for grabs. I let it ring. St. Mary's Hospital smells like artificial lemons and regret. I've been sitting in the waiting room for an hour, turning my phone over and over in my hands, watching news alerts pile up about the Davidson scandal. Each headline feels like another brick in a wall I can't tear down. "You didn't have to come." Mark's voice startles me. He looks exhausted, suit wrinkled like he's been sleeping in it. "Your text said she's asking for me." "Huh, she is." He runs a hand through his hair. Though I'm not sure if that's a good thing. The walk to Vivian's private room feels endless. Through the window, I see her propped up in bed, looking smaller somehow. Vulnerable. It's unsettling, like seeing a lion with its teeth pulled. "Clara!" Her voice is weaker than usual, but her eyes are sharp as ever. "Close the door." Mark hesitates. "Mother, maybe we should—" Out. One word, but it carries all her usual authority. He leaves, shoulders slumped. I remain standing, keeping my distance. "You wanted to see me?" "Sit." She gestures to the chair beside her bed. "We need to discuss terms." "Terms?" I almost laugh. "I'm not here to negotiate." "No?" She picks up her phone, taps something, then shows me the screen. My breath catches. It's an email chain between Mark and several Davidson Project investors, dating back months. His signature on documents he shouldn't have signed, proof of his involvement in the cover-up. "You really think I wouldn't have insurance?" Her smile is thin. "Mark's fingerprints are all over this. One call, and he goes down with me." My hands clench. "You'd destroy your own son? To protect him from himself?" "In a heartbeat." She sets the phone down. "The question is, would you?" The monitor beeps steadily in the silence. Through the window, I see Mark pacing in the hallway, phone pressed to his ear, probably talking to lawyers already. "What do you want?" "Retraction, public statement claiming your evidence was misconstrued, technical error in the environmental reports." She lists each point like she's ordering dinner. In exchange, these emails disappear. My phone buzzes. Thomas Chen again. I've been dodging his calls since the story broke. And if I refuse? Then Mark faces criminal charges. His career, his reputation, everything gone. She adjusts her position, wincing slightly. "You've proven your point, Clara. You're stronger than I thought. But ask yourself, is revenge worth destroying the man you once loved?" Before I can answer, there's a commotion in the hallway. Sophie bursts in, ignoring the nurse's protests. "Clara, don't say anything else." She waves her tablet. The Davidson Group just released their own statement. They're claiming full responsibility for the environmental cover-up. They're saying Vivian was misled too. Vivian's monitor spikes briefly. "What?" Sophie continues. Thomas Chen's team found evidence that Davidson's own environmental department falsified initial reports before bringing you in. They're taking the fall to avoid bigger investigations. I watch the color drain from Vivian's face as she processes this. Her perfect insurance policy, worthless. Mark's involvement, now a minor footnote in someone else's scandal. "You should rest, Vivian." I stand, finally meeting her eyes. "Stress isn't good for your heart." She grabs my wrist as I turn to leave. Her grip is surprisingly strong. "This isn't over." "Actually, it is." I gently remove her hand. "You taught me well. Always have a backup plan. Always be 3 steps ahead. The Davidson Group owes me a favor from an old project. Calling it in was expensive, but worth it. You couldn't have known that you'd try to sacrifice your own son to save yourself." I move toward the door. "Maybe not, but I knew you'd try something. You're predictable that way." In the hallway, Mark stares at me like he's seeing me for the first time. "The Davidson statement. Did you?" "You should call your lawyer," I tell him. "Make sure you're protected when they start official investigations. And Mark?" I pause, feeling the weight of Vivian's glare through the window. "Maybe it's time to start making your own decisions." Sophie falls into step beside me as we leave. "That was intense. You okay?" I look back at the hospital room, where Vivian sits alone, her empire crumbling despite her desperate grab for control. The victory tastes different than I expected. Not sweet, not bitter, just empty. "No," I answer honestly. "But I will be." My phone buzzes again, another news alert about the scandal. I switch it off without reading it. Some victories don't need an audience. The charity gala feels like walking into a beautifully decorated trap. Crystal chandeliers throw fractured light across faces I've known for years. Clients, competitors, friends who've chosen sides in the wake of the Davidson scandal. Their whispers follow me like perfumed shadows. Quite brave of her to show up. Did you hear about Vivian's condition? I heard she orchestrated the whole thing. Sophie squeezes my arm. We can still leave. No. I straighten my spine, gripping my champagne flute like a shield. This is exactly where I need to be. Across the room, Mark stands with a group of investors, his usual confidence replaced by something more brittle. He catches my eye, then quickly looks away. The gesture feels like a preview of what's to come. Clara! Thomas Chen materializes beside me. A word? We move to a quieter corner, where the orchestra's music provides cover for conversation. His expression is grave. The Davidson Group is retracting their statement. The champagne turns sour in my mouth. They can't. We had a deal. They found better terms elsewhere. He glances meaningfully across the room, to where Vivian has just entered, looking remarkably recovered. She's speaking with Robert Davidson himself, their heads close together. That's impossible. The evidence has been re-examined. Thomas's voice is carefully neutral. New experts suggest different interpretations. My hands are tied. The room suddenly feels too warm, too crowded. When? The announcement goes out tomorrow morning. Clara. He hesitates. You might want to prepare for... Clara! Vivian's voice cuts through the murmur of conversation. She's walking toward us, Robert Davidson in tow. I'm so glad you came. We have something to discuss. The crowd parts around them like water. I feel dozens of eyes watching, waiting for the drama to unfold. This is what Vivian does best, turns private wars into public spectacles. I'm not interested in... Oh, but you should be. Her smile is razor sharp. Robert has just shared some fascinating insights about certain manipulated documents. Apparently, someone went to great lengths to create a very specific narrative. My heart pounds. The environmental reports, were perfectly accurate. Robert Davidson steps forward. The altered versions, however, seem to have originated from an interesting source. Your design firm's servers, to be precise. The champagne flute slips from my fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The crash draws every eye in the room. That's not possible. But even as I say it, I remember giving Thomas's team access to my systems, trusting them to handle the technical details. You set me up. Vivian's smile widens. I told you once that you weren't strong enough for this family. I should have been more specific. You're not smart enough either. Mark appears at her side, looking sick. Mother, please. Not now, dear. She turns to the gathering crowd. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. As you may have heard, I've had some health challenges recently, but they've helped me realize what truly matters: family, loyalty, and truth. The word truth falls like a hammer. Several phones are out now, recording. Tomorrow's headlines writing themselves in real time. Clara thought she could destroy what I've built. Vivian's voice carries perfectly. Instead, she's demonstrated exactly why I was right about her all along. Amateur moves have amateur consequences. I look for Sophie, but she's been pushed to the edge of the crowd. Thomas Chen has vanished completely. The trap closes with elegant precision. Security will escort you out. Vivian's final twist of the knife. And Clara, expect to hear from our lawyers. Fraud charges are just the beginning. As two suited men approach, I catch a last glimpse of Mark's face. There's something there. Regret? Pity? But he doesn't move to help. Some patterns never change. Outside, the night air hits like a slap. Sophie rushes out behind me. Clara, wait! We can fix this! There must be something! Don't you see? My laugh sounds hysterical even to my own ears. She planned this from the moment I found those surveillance photos. Everything, the hospital, the Davidson statement, Thomas Chen, it was all part of her game. What are you going to do? I stare up at the gala's glittering windows, where life continues as if my world hasn't just imploded. Somewhere up there, Vivian is savoring her victory, probably already planning her next move. The only thing I can do. My voice steadies. Learn to play better. The flash drive feels impossibly heavy in my hand as I stand outside Vivian's office. Through the glass walls, I can see her at her desk, orchestrating her empire's recovery with practiced ease. The fraud charges against me are still pending, but she's already moved on to new victories. She looks up as I enter, her smile sharp as broken glass. "Clara, security didn't mention you had an appointment. They're busy dealing with the press downstairs." I close the door behind me. Something about anonymous tips regarding offshore accounts and falsified insurance claims. The smile freezes. "More desperate accusations? Haven't you learned?" "Actually, I learned exactly what you taught me." I placed the flash drive on her desk. "About keeping receipts, about having insurance." She doesn't touch it. "What is this?" "Everything. Your real financial records. The bribes to building inspectors. The money laundering through shell companies." I tap the drive. "Even that interesting transfer to Thomas Chen's private account right before the gala." "You're bluffing. Mark helped me find it." That lands. For the first time, real fear flickers across her face. "Mark would never—" "Check your phone." She does, and I watch the color drain from her face as she reads whatever message Mark has just sent. When she looks up, her composure is cracked. "What do you want?" "Funny. That's exactly what you asked me in the hospital." I sit down, uninvited. "But I'm not here to negotiate." "Then why?" "Because I want you to understand something." I lean forward. "You didn't lose because I outsmarted you. You lost because you taught Mark the same lessons you taught me, about survival, about loyalty, about always having an escape plan." Her hand trembles slightly as she reaches for her phone again. "I can still destroy you. One call." "To who?" "The Davidson Group?" I pull out my own phone, showing her the email chain. They're already distancing themselves. Seems their board doesn't appreciate being used in personal vendettas. Bad for business. A commotion rises from the lobby below. Through the glass walls, we can see reporters gathering, cameras ready. "They're here for the press conference," I tell her. "The one where Mark explains how his mother's company has been operating for the past decade. Unless what?" Her voice is barely a whisper. "Unless you sign everything over to him. Today. Let him run the company his way without your guidance." She laughs, but it sounds hollow. "You think this will fix anything? That Mark will suddenly become his own man?" "No, but it gives him a chance." I stand. "Which is more than you ever gave either of us." The elevator dings. Mark steps out, flanked by board members and lawyers. Through the glass, our eyes meet. He looks different, stronger maybe, or just free. "You've destroyed my family," Vivian says quietly. "No, you did that yourself. I just showed Mark the evidence." She stares at the flash drive for a long moment. Below, the crowd of reporters grows. Her empire teeters on the edge of exposure, ready to crumble. "He's my son, and he deserves better than what you've given him." I move toward the door. "You have 10 minutes to decide." After that, Mark starts talking. "You really think you've won?" She calls after me. "That this makes you better than me?" I pause, hand on the doorknob. "No, it makes me exactly like you. That's what scares you most, isn't it?" The look on her face tells me I'm right. As I walk away, I hear her calling for her lawyers. Through the glass, I watch her pick up the flash drive with trembling fingers. Mark meets me at the elevator. "Did she—" "Give her a minute." I press the lobby button. "She taught us both about power, Mark. Now she gets to learn about losing it." He nods slowly. "What happens after?" "That's up to you." The elevator starts descending. "But whatever you decide, make sure it's actually your decision." As we reach the lobby, my phone buzzes. A message from Vivian's lawyer. She's ready to sign. "You know," Mark says quietly, "she'll never forgive either of us for this. I watch the numbers count down, floor by floor. Some victories aren't about forgiveness. The elevator doors open to camera flashes and shouted questions. Mark straightens his tie, ready to face them, ready to start over. I step back, letting him take the lead. Some battles you win by walking away. The moving boxes in Vivian's office look wrong somehow, too ordinary for the end of an empire. She's taking down her awards when I arrive, each acrylic testament to her success carefully wrapped in newspaper. Come to gloat? She doesn't turn around. No. I set a folder on her desk. To return these. She glances at the surveillance photos spilling out. Keep them as a souvenir. I don't need souvenirs. I watch her hands shake slightly as she wraps another award. The company announcement went out this morning. Mark's doing well. He's gutting everything I built. Finally, she faces me. The past month has aged her decade. Was that your idea or his? You really still don't understand, do you? I pick up one of her photos. Her and Mark at some charity event, both smiling perfectly. He's not destroying your legacy, he's fixing it. Her laugh is bitter. By exposing our methods, canceling profitable contracts, that's not fixing, that's surrender. That's integrity. I set the photo down. Something you taught him to fake so well, he finally wanted the real thing. A knock interrupts us. Mark stands in the doorway, looking uncertain. These days, he always looks uncertain when his mother's involved, like he's still learning to trust his own judgment. The board meeting's starting, he tells her. They're waiting for your formal resignation. Vivian straightens her jacket. Armor for one last battle. I suppose you'll both enjoy watching this. Actually, I'm leaving. I move toward the door. This part isn't about me. Mark catches my arm as I pass. Clara, wait. I never thanked you. Don't. I gently pull away. Just do better, both with the company and... I glance at Vivian, still proud even in defeat, with family. Hey, is that what we are now? Vivian's voice stops me. Family? No, but maybe someday Mark can have one that doesn't run on fear. Outside, Sophie waits by her car. She's been my constant through all this, watching me become someone she probably doesn't fully recognize anymore. Ready for your meeting? She asks. I nod. My new design firm launches next week. Bigger projects, bigger clients, built on reputation rather than revenge. It feels strange, starting over. Good strange? I look back at the building where I first learned about power, both wielding it and surviving it. Through the windows, I can see Mark leading Vivian toward the boardroom, their shadows stretching long against the glass. Just strange. I get into the car. Did you know Vivian called me yesterday? Said she's finally proud of me, that I proved her right about what it takes to succeed in this world. Sophie starts the engine. Did you tell her where to stick her pride? No. I watch the building shrink in the side mirror. Because part of me thinks she's right. I became exactly what she always wanted Mark to be, someone willing to burn everything down to win. You're nothing like her, aren't I? I used her own tactics against her, played her game, just better. I turn away from the mirror. The difference is, I chose to walk away after winning. She never could. Sophie navigates through traffic in silence for a moment. So what now? Now? I pull out my phone, where an email from Mark waits unread. Probably about the company transition, or maybe something more personal. I leave it unopened. Now I figure out who I am without revenge driving every decision. And if Vivian tries something else, I think about the final piece of leverage I still have. Evidence I never showed Mark. Proof of crimes that would destroy what's left of his relationship with his mother. It sits in a safe deposit box, my own insurance policy, my own piece of Vivian's legacy. Then I'll remember what winning really cost. I switch off my phone. Some victories feel like losses when you look at them right. Sophie pulls up to my new office building. The sign company is just finishing installing my company's logo. Clean, modern, nothing like the Harrison aesthetic. You know what the weird part is? I gather my things. I think Vivian finally respects me, not for beating her, but for knowing when to stop. Is that enough? I step out into the morning sun, looking up at my name against the clear sky. It has to be. Otherwise, I'm just another version of her, waiting to self-destruct. The door closes behind me with a soft click, final as a period at the end of a very long sentence.
It was one of those days where, up until that point, everything seemed normal. I'm Carol, and managing a hotel is essentially what I do for a living. Check-ins and check-outs are a never-ending hustle, and you have to be prepared for everything, including complaints. I was working at the front desk when this guy suddenly rushed over to me. From head to toe, he radiated wealth. Elegant suit, sleek hair, the whole 9 yards. He gave me a scowl as if I had broken his room as he slapped his costly phone down on the counter. Hey, my room is in horrible condition. Who's to blame for this? He asked, his tone sharp. I tried to smooth over the bumpy beginning by putting on my best customer service smile. I really apologize for that. I am the manager, Carol. Allow me to immediately fix this for you. He scowled and gave me a suspicious look. Hopefully, I was going to give the owner a call. Once more, what is your name? Carol, I said again, maintaining a neutral tone. Let's resolve this. To make up for the inconvenience, how about I give you a stay in one of our best rooms on the property? I could see his eyes getting softer as we made our way to the next room. I apologize for exploding in that manner, he mumbled while rubbing his nape. My name is James. I'm exhausted from traveling for weeks at a time. James, don't worry. Everybody has those days. I remarked, let's just make sure the remainder of your stay is enjoyable, as I unlocked a luxurious chamber. His expression brightened as he peered inside. This will function well. Regards. I felt a tiny bit of relief when I watched him settle. We struck up a conversation while I completed some paperwork. It transpired that he was a Bitcoin investor on the move, reaping the rewards of his astute decisions. He acknowledged, it's not all it's cracked up to be. As I handed him the keys to his new room, I responded, I can imagine. However, you do get to meet new people frequently, don't you? He laughed. Yes, like flamboyant hotel managers who know how to deal with a disgruntled customer. I chuckled. A small portion of the job's charm. He halted before going to his room. Carol, how about we go out to supper later? I owe you one for putting up with my outburst. I was a little surprised because I hadn't anticipated that. However, he appeared sincere. Yes, James, that would be pleasant. And so it was that I found myself having dinner with a hotel visitor, discussing everything from cryptocurrency to my favorite pizza toppings. He laughed a lot, was easy to chat to, and didn't mind if I vent to him about my crazy day. After our unplanned supper today, James and I began to spend more time together. It was more genuine and unvarnished than any of those corny love stories. After my shifts at the hotel, we would get together and sometimes go out for a late-night snack or just stroll and chat till the wee hours of the morning. We were at this little dive bar one evening, the kind where the beer is always cool and everyone knows your name. Nestled at a corner booth, our conversation was muffled by the bar's drab background noise. James was fiddling with the label on his beer bottle, a habit he developed when he was thinking about something. You know, Carol, this road life is kind of lonely, even though I've seen a lot of places and traveled a lot. I sipped some of my drink and observed him intently. So why do it again? What's the point of not settling down? With a brief, dry laugh, he laughed. As you settle down, what will you do? Invest in real estate, buy a dog, and undertake Sunday lawn maintenance? I'm not like that. I shook my head and laughed. You know, it doesn't have to be so dull. However, I understand. Freedom is difficult to give up. We settled into a relaxed silence as we just observed the activity around us. Then, without even being aware of it, I began sharing more personal details about my life with her than I had with anyone in a long time. You know, my little sister Anna and I were the only ones left when my parents passed away. I had to mature quickly in order to care for the two of us. Everything depended on me, including her life and education, so I put everything on wait. James looked at me with a serious expression. That is a lot of weight. It must have been difficult for Carol to be given so much responsibility. Yes, it was terrible. But what can you do? You play the hand that is handed to you. I shrugged, trying not to let the tone get too serious. But you've done well for yourself, managing a hotel and all. I could tell he was attempting to lighten the situation. This time I actually laughed. Yeah, I guess managing the hotel, handling the bills, and making sure Anna got a more or less normal life. His gaze intense. He leaned forward. You're remarkable, you know that. I jokingly smacked his arm. Stop it. Yet his words warmed me on the inside. I felt seen by them. How about you then? Do you ever consider starting a family? Turning the tables on him, I questioned. James moved in an awkward way. Well, that's a difficult one, family. To put it mildly, my parents and I don't always agree. I have my root and they have their kingdom. An empire, huh? I gave him a playful shoulder bump. Sounds fancy. He smiled regretfully. Not as elegant as it may seem. More like golden handcuffs and a ton of expectations. That night, we barely stopped talking for hours. It seemed as though walls were broken down by being open with one another. It was only when the bartender began setting the chairs on the tables that I realized what hour it was. The relationship with James had been unexpectedly easy. We'd been dating for weeks, but he'd never really gotten close to me when it came to important things like where this was headed. That is, until one night when everything changed. James was asked to supper at my house. Other than when he picked me up for dates, it was the first time he had ever seen my place. He strolled into my apartment, observing everything. Caroline, this is extremely beautiful. Really astonished, he replied. Didn't figure you for living somewhere like this. I threw open my arms and laughed. What, you believed that I was a hobbit or something? My parents left us with a good life after they died away, sold their home, paid the down payment on the mortgage, and purchased an apartment for Anna and myself. I own this space. Impressed, James nodded. You've done well for yourself. Really well. The night continued, and we had a bottle of wine while sitting on the couch after dinner. That was when the news came out. Carol, I've been thinking a lot lately about us. I arched an eyebrow as my heart began to pound. Oh, I see. What have you been considering too? His eyes met mine as he took my hand. Carol, you have my undying affection. Although I realize I stated I wasn't looking to settle down, things are different with you. There's nowhere else I could envision myself but here with you. The words came over me like a tsunami. He was Mr. Non-Commitment only a few weeks ago, and now he's this. However, I noticed something real as I looked into his eyes. James, are you serious? You're not only a victim of the present. He squeezed my hand and shook his head. Never before have I taken things so seriously. Will you marry me, Carol? Thick and weighty, the question lingered in the air. My heart was responding even before my head had a chance to register a second thought. Yes, I'll marry you. And we were engaged in an instant. James gave me a stunning ring a few weeks later. It was straightforward, yet exquisite. It was as if I had entered a dream that I didn't want to wake up from. James talked about the wedding practically right away. Carol, you deserve a wonderful thing. One evening, as we were going over expenses and venues, he stated, "Let's throw a wedding that no one will forget." When he suggested the financial strategy, I was dubious. I was considering organizing things myself since I have the contacts. You simply supply the money, let's say $50,000. After we buy a house together, I'll pay for our honeymoon in the most opulent hotel on the planet." The sum caused me to hesitate. I had most of it, so it was a lot. However, as I looked at him, my reservations vanished as I was overcome with enthusiasm. "Okay, if you think that's best, I trust you, James." He took over the planning when I deposited the funds into his account. My heart grew as I saw him fully immerse himself in the arrangements. This was a man who had entered my life by chance, yet he already gave me the impression that he had always been there. Every night I smiled as I went to bed, thinking about how fortunate I was and how well everything was working out. As the wedding plans were picking up steam, I figured it was time James met my sister, Anna. She was the only family I had left, and her opinion mattered to me, even if she could be a handful sometimes. We decided to meet up at the local diner where Anna worked as a waitress. The bell jingled as we walked in, and Anna spotted us right away, her face lighting up. "Hey, sis," Anna waved us over. Then her eyes slid over to James. "And you must be the famous fiancé. I've heard loads about you." James flashed his $1,000,000 smile, stepping forward to shake her hand. "And you must be the beautiful sister I've been told so much about. You two could be twins." I rolled my eyes, feeling a mix of pride and annoyance. Okay, cut it out with the charm, mister." Anna laughed, but then leaned in with a mischievous glint in her eye. "So, James, are you as rich as they say? My sister sure knows how to push my buttons." "Anna," I hissed, embarrassed. She always knew how to push my buttons. James just chuckled, taking it in stride. "Well, I've done all right for myself, but Carol's right. It's not about the money, it's love that really counts." Anna raised an eyebrow, looking impressed. "Smooth talker, huh? I like him." Over the next few weeks, James proved to be the perfect gentleman. He was charming, attentive, and never made me feel like he was anything but utterly devoted to me. He didn't even bat an eye at Anna's flirtatious antics, which was a relief. One day, in the midst of all the wedding chaos, my best friend Liz and I went to a bridal salon to pick out my wedding dress. The place was draped in silk and satin, a bridal heaven. As I was being zipped into one of the gowns, I heard a familiar laugh from the next booth. Curious, I poked my head around the curtain, and there was Anna twirling in front of a mirror in a wedding dress. "Anna, what in the world are you doing in a wedding dress?" I asked, my voice echoing my bewilderment. She stopped twirling and gave me a crooked smile. "Oh, just trying some stuff on, for fun." Liz, who'd come around to see what the fuss was about, chuckled. "Looks like someone's caught the wedding bug." Anna's laugh was stiff, not quite reaching her eyes. "Yeah, something like that. Let's just say I might need one sooner than you think. What are you serious? Is there something you need to tell me?" I pressed, half amused, half concerned. "Just let it be a surprise," Anna said, her tone light but evasive. We all laughed it off, thinking she was just being her usual dramatic self. I turned back to my own reflection, the image of Anna in that wedding dress lingering in my mind, but I brushed it aside, focusing on my own big day. That day was like any other until it wasn't. James had left in a hurry after breakfast, mumbling about some meeting he couldn't miss. He forgot his phone on the coffee table, and it started buzzing like crazy just minutes after he dashed out. Curiosity got the better of me. I thought it might be something urgent about the wedding or his work. Probably just his buddy checking in, I muttered to myself as I picked up the phone. There was no password. James never bothered with one. That alone should have tipped me off that he wasn't as cautious or as clever as he liked to think. The screen lit up with a storm of messages, all from the same contact. Anna. My heart sank a bit. Why is he texting Anna so much? I opened the messages, telling myself I was just being paranoid, but the words I read burned through the screen. "I can't wait to be with you forever," Anna had written. "Forget Carol. It's you I want standing with me." And James, the man I was about to marry, replied, "Soon, love. We just need to play along a little longer. She's so clueless, it's almost funny." I scrolled through more messages, each one a stab in the heart. They talked about the wedding, about me, about how they'd use my money to start their life together once I was out of the picture. But the most disgusting thing was that Anna was pregnant by James. The room spun around me. I felt sick. My sister, my baby sister, who I'd practically raised on my own, was stabbing me in the back. And James, the man who'd promised to love and protect me, was the knife in her hand. An hour later, James came back looking flustered. "Hey, babe, see my phone?" he asked, kissing my cheek like nothing was amiss. I handed it over with a smile plastered on my face, the same one I'd worn 1,000 times before. "You left it here," I said sweetly. "Must be losing your touch, leaving your lifeline around." As he scrolled through his phone, presumably checking for missed messages, I watched him closely. Does he have any idea that I know? Does he even care? But James was oblivious, caught up in his own deceitful world. He laughed at something on his screen, and I felt my hands clench into fists. Laugh it up, James. Enjoy it while it lasts. Later that night, as we lay in bed, he was all smiles and plans for the future. Our future. "It's going to be perfect, Carol. This wedding, our life together, you'll see." I turned to face him, my heart a battleground of love and longing. "I'm sure it will be," I murmured, letting him pull me close. "Absolutely perfect." As he drifted off, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The gears in my mind were turning, plotting, planning. I wasn't going to be the victim in this twisted play. They wanted a show. I'd give them one they'd never forget. But first, I had to act the part of the doting fiancé just a little longer. The day of the wedding had arrived, and with it, a performance worthy of an award. The grand hall was filled with flowers, and our guests whispered excitedly, none the wiser of the drama about to unfold. Just as we were about to exchange vows, the doors at the back of the hall burst open. Anna, in a wedding dress, marched up the aisle like she owned the place. The crowd gasped, turning to watch her approach. She didn't stop until she reached us, pushing me aside with a dramatic flair. "I'm the one who deserves to be here, Carol, not you. I'm having his baby," she declared loudly, turning to James. "Tell her, tell everyone, James." James let go of my hand and laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that echoed off the walls. "Thank you, Carol, for this lavish wedding setup. It's perfect for me and your sister." The guests murmured, shock written on every face. James continued, "Why don't you take a seat, Carol? Enjoy the show as a guest." His words were meant to wound, but I simply smiled, stepping back gracefully. "Of course I wouldn't miss it for the world," I said, my voice calm and even. Their smug smiles faltered, confusion flickering as I walked away without a scene. I took a seat, crossing my legs and fixing my gaze on the farce unfolding before me as they turned to face the priest and made their own vows. Another dramatic entrance halted everything once more. A woman, clearly older and carrying an air of fury like a storm, marched down the aisle. "James!" she bellowed, making him pale. "You lying, cheating scumbag!" The whole room froze. James's fake smile slipped, revealing a hint of the panic he felt as the woman stood before us all. "I am his wife and mother to his child, which he has conveniently forgotten, along with the vows he made to me." Anna's legs almost gave out beneath her, her face colorless. Her gaze moved from James to the woman and finally to me, a wordless cry for assistance. I got up and said, "I also have a little gift for everyone. I spoke with clarity and frigid precision, enunciating every word. James is more than a bigamy. He's bankrupt. He is deeply in debt, as proven by a private investigator. Not only did his investments backfire, but he has also been embezzling money from his own relatives. Whispers sprang out throughout the audience, the rich sound of scandal and rumors blending together. James's spouse betrayed Anna. With tears flowing down her cheeks, my sister staggered back as she charged at her, saying, "And you, how dare you?" As I watched, a sense of both bittersweet delight filled my chest. This was the result of weeks of preparation and suffering. It was gratifying to watch them fall apart, to witness their worlds fall apart, but it also left a hollow aching deep below. The actual wife went on accusing, her voice harsh and merciless. "You think he would build something with you when he left us with nothing? Girl, get up." Anna sobbed as her ideal wedding descended into a horror. James tried to talk so he could maintain some semblance of dignity, but his wife gave him a hard smack across the cheek, and the sound of the cracking sharply echoed into the hallway. James's parents, an additional pair of unexpected guests, barged through the doors just as the guests were starting to digest the startling disclosures. The old couple, their features furrowed with surprise and wrath as they took in the sight before them, looked every inch the part of a frustrated nobility. The first to speak, his voice booming over the murmuring of the audience, was the father, a stern-looking man wearing a fine suit. "James, you have me completely embarrassed. To think you could resort to such deception," he yelled, staring at his son with a glare that seemed to be trying to evoke regret only by his words. His mother gripped a handkerchief firmly. She was a frail-looking woman with tears streaming down her cheeks. She sobbed, "My son, how could you? We did not raise you in this manner. It's unacceptable to deceive these women." James stood there, the disdain of the public and his family casting a shadow over his usually elegant manner. When he opened his mouth to explain, his father interrupted. "The legacy of this family no longer includes you. Think of yourself as inheritorless," his father said in a stern and decisive tone. Once again, the room descended into mayhem as guests pulled out their phones, probably filming the end of my ideal wedding. I brought James to court in the ensuing weeks. In my case, I sought reimbursement for the $50,000 I had naively given up for our intended wedding. James was ordered to reimburse every amount by the judge after my case was decided in my favor due to the overwhelming evidence. His legal wife followed suit not too long after. She asked for alimony for their daughter and filed a lawsuit against him for deceit and mental distress. I showed up to every court hearing. Every time I saw James suffer the repercussions of his deeds, I was filled with a bittersweet sense of vindication. Surprisingly, Anna was behind him, having sided with the guy who had almost destroyed me. Anna came up to me one day outside the courtroom. "Carol, he loves me and I love him. Regardless of what you or anyone else believes, we are going to overcome this." I looked at her, my once loved sibling who was now essentially a stranger. "Affection? Do you refer to this as love?" "Anna, he took advantage of both of us. Let your eyes open. He lies." "However, he has evolved. He'll adapt to suit me." "You simply couldn't see the positive aspects of him," Anna shot back, her voice faltering but resolute. I let out a chilly laugh and shook my head. "Well, Anna, there is no goodness in him. He is a scammer, and you are just another victim of his deceit. The falsehoods, the betrayals, the legal battles, everything that had transpired weighed heavily on me as I was leaving. Everything has taken a toll. There was, nevertheless, an odd feeling of resolution. I had shown his true colors to the world, and the man who had sworn he would love me had exhibited them. With a ghostly hush and a trail of unfulfilled promises and obligations in his wake, James quietly left town, closing the final chapter of their narrative. Before disappearing, he had managed to pay his debts to both me and his legal wife, maybe believing it would clear his record. But my sister Anna, who was left pregnant and alone, was the real mess he left behind. Anna visited my flat a few weeks after James vanished. We had not seen each other since the scene at the courts. She stood with her eyes downcast, a shadow of the fiery person she once was. "Carol, I need help," she murmured, her voice faltering. "I'm going to have his baby." And he left. I am devoid of everything. I could have given in, could have thrown open the door and welcomed her back into my life without a second thought if I had been the one who had raised her. However, too much had occurred. "You'll have the baby, and you already have the apartment. That's the beginning. You are not homeless. You are not defenseless. However, Carol, I am broke. The baby, the bills. I require assistance." I shook my head, my heart hurting to see her like this, but the resolve was solid. "Anna, you made your decision. You are now able to make another. Sort it out the way I had to after Mom and Dad passed away, like I did following your backstab." She cried, her hands covering her face as her body trembled. "I didn't aim to cause you harm. I believed I had found love. I did, truly. You don't betray your family out of love. Love doesn't turn you into a bystander to my shame. You didn't love me enough to tell me the truth before everything went wrong and to avoid him." With a look of desperation on her face, Anna looked up. "That's it then? Are you simply going to ignore me?" "Yes, that is all there is to it. Just as I took care of you, you're going to leave here and care for your child on your own." I turned around and headed back to my flat, slamming the door on her cries with a final resounding bang that shut my heart. Though essential, it was the toughest thing I had ever done. After that day, everything returned to a peaceful normalcy that I hadn't realized I'd missed. I returned wholeheartedly to my work, picked up long-neglected interests, and gradually re-established the independence that had always been my identity. Regarding Anna, I've been informed by family friends that she gave birth to a young girl. They said she was barely making ends meet. Sincerely, I hope that she found her path and discovered the strength in her mothering role, something she had not discovered as a sister.
When my husband found out that I couldn't inherit my father's estate, he screamed at me, "What? You can't inherit the property. I have no use for you anymore. We're getting divorced right now." Later, I got my revenge on my newly remarried husband and sister. My name is Linda, a 32-year-old office worker, and I've been married to Richard for 2 years. I met Richard through a relative's introduction, and we got married. My family had some wealth, but since my sister Susan and I were the only children, our relatives were worried about the inheritance and introduced me to my husband. After that, my husband started living with us at my family home. My mother passed away a few years ago, and my father, my husband, and I lived together. My husband seemed very kind and treated my father well, but a relative who introduced him to me said something concerning just before our wedding. "I know I introduced Richard to you, but be careful. He's a bit obsessed with money." I was troubled by this warning so close to our wedding, but I didn't notice any signs of grief from my husband, so we went ahead and got married. Even after marriage, I kept an eye on my husband because of the relative's words, but he didn't seem obsessed with money. However, he did seem curious about my father's wealth, casually asking how much property we had when they were drinking together. My father openly talked about it, so I didn't worry too much. Another thing my husband was interested in was my sister. My sister is 5 years younger than me, lively and outgoing, in contrast to my calm demeanor. Her relationships with men are quite flashy. She doesn't look like me, and my husband was surprised when he first saw her. Susan is quite different from Linda, isn't she? Seeing my husband fascinated by my beautiful sister, The complete opposite of plain and unnoticeable me made me feel complicated. But the relatives introduced me as a quiet and plain-looking person because they were worried that if I didn't get married, there would be no one to inherit the family home. I thought there was no need to worry since I had a beautiful sister, but later I understood why the relatives were concerned. My father spoiled my sister, letting her go to college and even community college. After graduation, my sister didn't have any particular goal in attending college or community college. She simply didn't want to work. My mother tried to persuade her to get a job right after college, but my father insisted on letting her go to community college. After graduating from community college, my sister got a job at my father's acquaintance's company but quit after only 6 months. Her excuse for quitting surprised me. I can't showcase my talents at that company. My mother and I were dumbfounded by my sister, who talked as if she understood everything about the job even though she hadn't worked for even half a year. But my father believed her and quickly found her another job. After she started working at the new company, my mother fell ill and was hospitalized. When my mother was hospitalized, my sister visited the hospital every day, constantly taking time off work. She eventually quit this job too, saying she needed to take care of my mother, but her care was just sitting in the hospital room chatting with my mother or staring at her mobile phone in the waiting room. I had to go to the hospital to change my mother's laundry, and my sister was no help at all. My mother might have been happy to have someone to talk to, but about a month after being hospitalized, her condition worsened to the point where she couldn't even speak. Within 2 weeks of her condition worsening, my mother passed away. My father and sister were so shaken by the sudden news that they couldn't even prepare for the funeral, so I had to take care of everything. Thanks to the cooperation of our relatives, we were somehow able to send my mother off peacefully. After my mother's death, my sister started a part-time job and moved out to live on her own, since her part-time earnings weren't enough to cover the rent. My father had been paying for her rent and utilities, and it seems she's using the money she earns for fun. Whenever her part-time salary isn't enough, she goes to my father to get some extra money. When my mother was alive, she was strict with my sister, so my father didn't give her any allowance, and now he gives her as much as she wants. I thought it was no problem if both my father and sister were satisfied with this arrangement. Even after I got married and started living with my husband in my parents' home, my father continued to give my sister an allowance. I didn't notice at the time, but my sister was also asking my husband for money, and he was happily giving it to her. He couldn't say no to my beautiful sister and would give her money, saying, "Keep this a secret from Linda. If she finds out, she might get jealous." My sister seemed to be living off the money she got from my father and husband, going to her part-time job whenever she felt like it. But that lifestyle didn't last forever. It ended when my father fell ill and had to be hospitalized. I was taking care of my father, visiting the hospital between work, but my sister never showed up. Instead, she started calling me, demanding money. "I've been getting money from Dad every month, so keep giving it to me. The rent and public utilities are all being deducted from Dad's account." She spoke to me in an angry tone, but I was surprised by the facts I learned for the first time. I was furious at my sister, who cared only about her life and not about our hospitalized father. I really wanted to hang up on her, but she seemed to be in trouble, so I asked her, "How much money has Dad been giving you every month? How much are you getting from Dad every month?" "Get a full-time job and live on the money you earn," I advised my sister. She answered grumpily, "Stop nagging. I'm getting $1,000 a month. Rent is separate, you know." I was dumbfounded by my sister, who proudly told me the amount. I thought that if I kept giving this much money to my grown-up sister every month, she would never feel like working. Seriously, I didn't think it was a big problem to give money to my sister, as I thought my father would recover soon after being hospitalized. However, my father's condition suddenly worsened, and I hurriedly contacted our relatives. The doctor also told me it was a serious situation, and I was quite shocked. I wanted my husband's support during this time, but he rarely visited the hospital, claiming he was busy with work. Moreover, when he did show up, he would ask me inappropriate questions like, "Joseph's inheritance must be huge, right? Since you and your sister are the only heirs, are you gonna split it in half?" I had no words to respond to my husband, who only talked about the inheritance. I felt both realization and disgust, understanding what the relatives meant when they said my husband was obsessed with money. When I called my sister to tell her about our father's critical condition, she was only concerned about her money. "More importantly, make sure you pay me every month. I can live without that money." The call ended abruptly, and I was furious at my sister's words. But I was also concerned about the faint male voice I heard on the other end of the phone. I had a bad feeling recognizing that voice. About a month later, my father passed away, and neither my sister nor my husband were there in his final moments. Having experienced my mother's funeral, I knew how heavy the task of preparing for a funeral could be. Moreover, neither my husband nor my sister helped with anything, and my sister didn't even attend the funeral. My husband did show up, but he disappeared right after, saying he had work. A relative who introduced me to my husband noticed his absence and asked me, "Where's Richard? It's strange for the host's husband to not be here, isn't it?" I could only respond with a wry smile. "He's busy with work, so he went home." The relative sighed at my answer, but I felt like sighing too. After my father's funeral ended, and I finally had a moment to breathe, my husband asked me with a sleazy grin, "Finally, how much did you inherit? Even if you split it in half, you must have inherited a considerable amount, right?" Just as the relatives had warned me before marriage, my husband seemed consumed with thoughts of my father's inheritance. My sister got $92 million, and I got zero. I hadn't even talked to the lawyer yet, and I was still trying to process the funeral. Looking at my husband, who was happily talking about the inheritance, I felt like laughing more than getting angry. My husband, who believed my words, immediately yelled, "What? You can't inherit any property? I don't need you anymore." "Divorce now," my husband declared. I felt the same way, so I shot back, "Let's do it. You married me for my father's inheritance in the first place. I'll divorce you." I shouted and thrust the prepared divorce papers at my husband. He seemed a little flustered, as if he had anticipated this, but he signed them anyway. As he left the house after signing the divorce papers, he said, "I'll divorce you, who gets zero inheritance, and remarry your sister Susan, who gets the $92 million, and left. I didn't care about his words and immediately proceeded with the divorce. I was able to part ways with my terrible husband. My ex-husband seemed to have started the process of marrying my sister the very next day. A few days later, I received a call from my ex-husband. "Do you still believe that story? When will you handle the inheritance? Hurry up and give Susan the $92 million, my ex-husband yelled over the phone. I had been waiting for him to contact me. I didn't want to reach out to my ex-husband, who had left the house on his own. I replied to him in a businesslike tone, "Let's discuss this at my place next Sunday. I'm preparing for the procedure and will be waiting." Thinking he would receive the inheritance, my ex-husband happily hung up. But I was looking forward to seeing his face when you learned the truth. On the weekend, my ex-husband and sister came to my family home. Surprised to find that I had called a lawyer, my ex-husband seemed to convince himself, "Of course, you need a lawyer when inheriting a large sum of money." Then the lawyer turned to my ex-husband with a puzzled look and began to speak, "Compensation claim. Before we can discuss the inheritance, there's the matter of Linda's compensation claim against Richard." He showed my ex-husband several photos featuring him leaving my sister's house, with clear dates marked. The lawyer addressed my ex-husband. "These are evidence photos of infidelity before the divorce was finalized, so you must pay compensation." I had heard my ex-husband talking about the inheritance over the phone with my sister, and immediately asked the lawyer to investigate his infidelity. Perhaps they thought I was distracted by my father's funeral, but my ex-husband and sister met at her house almost daily, allowing me to gather plenty of evidence. The conversation shifted from inheritance to compensation, leaving my ex-husband and sister dumbfounded. But my ex-husband quickly recovered and retorted, "Compensation is nothing compared to the $92 million from the inheritance. I'll pay it right away." He signed the compensation claim documents handed to him by the lawyer, acting all high and mighty. I confirmed it and told him, "Enjoy your life with my sister who inherited zero. Since you signed, I'll make sure you pay the compensation." The moment they heard inheritance zero, my sister screamed, "Why is my inheritance zero?" My ex-husband turned bright red and angrily said, "There's no way the inheritance is zero. I won't allow you to take it all for yourself." The lawyer calmly began to explain to the furious pair, "Susan is already the stepdaughter of your late mother, and since she was not legally adopted by your late father, there is no legal parent-child relationship. Therefore, Susan cannot inherit your father's estate." I explained to my confused sister, "When our parents remarried, Susan was only about a year old, and I clarified that our parents never legally adopted each other's children. I was 6 years old when our parents remarried, and I remember being happy to suddenly have a sister. However, I never thought that sister would later betray me by stealing my husband. Both parents struggled with young children, and there was a mediator who thought it best for them to remarry. My mother loved me like her real daughter, and my father cherished my sister. Perhaps my father spoiled my sister because she wasn't his biological daughter, and he wanted to be extra careful. Although both parents remarried with children, my mother, suspected by relatives of targeting my wealthy family's assets, refused to legally adopt my sister. The relatives only recommended marriage proposals to me because they knew I was the only one who could inherit my father's property. Now I understand that my father continued to support my sister financially even after she became an adult because he couldn't pass on his inheritance to her. I also never legally adopted my mother, so we weren't legally parent and child, but it never mattered in our daily lives. It seems my parents never told my sister that they were both remarried, and she only learned the truth today. My ex-husband seemed to understand the situation immediately, his face turning from bright red to pale blue. He had not only failed to get the inheritance he was expecting from my sister, but had also signed documents to pay compensation. With a blue face, my ex-husband asked me, "Was what you said? My sister gets $92 million and I get nothing a lie?" I held back my laughter and replied, "Of course it's a lie. It's to get back at you for cheating on me behind my back. Besides, there's no way a bankrupt inheritance would be worth $92 million. Even my wealthy father didn't have $92 million in inheritance." Suddenly, my sister, who had been silent, screamed, "I've been counting on Dad's inheritance and have done a lot of shopping. What will happen to the money Dad used to pay me? Will Linda pay for it?" I answered my frightened sister, "You have a reliable husband now, so you don't need it anymore, do you? Let Richard support you." My sister stared at her pale-faced ex-husband, who shook his head in response. "I've also done a lot of shopping, expecting the inheritance, so I can't afford it. Besides, I have to pay compensation, so I'm at my limit." After saying this, my husband suddenly began to apologize deeply to me. "Linda, I'm sorry, it was my fault. Will you forgive me and start over?" The lawyer, watching this, was laughing as he prepared to leave. Where had the arrogant attitude gone when he first came to the house? His deep apology looked ridiculous. After the discussion, my ex-husband and sister left dejectedly, and they soon divorced. For my ex-husband, who remarried with the goal of inheriting from my sister, he seemed to have no interest in her since he didn't get the inheritance. He even said to himself that, with the payment of compensation to me, he couldn't take care of my sister. My ex-husband had no assets, so it was decided to pay the compensation in installments from his monthly salary. The lawyer advised me that this way I wouldn't miss out. My sister, without the support of our father, had to work part-time every day, but she couldn't make the debt payments and ended up filing for personal bankruptcy. Afterward, she even gave up her condominium and disappeared, and no one knows where she went. My father had been supporting my sister financially, but by spoiling her like that, she became unable to work seriously. Afterward, I started living alone in my family home, and some relatives talked about introducing me to a potential marriage partner, but I declined. I didn't want to be introduced to another man like my ex-husband, so this time I want to find a marriage partner on my own.